The universe noticed the anomaly long before anyone dared speak of it. A faint vibration in the dark, a ripple of energy where no stars burned and no ships had ever traveled. Automated sensors stationed along the Orion corridor began to fail one by one, each sending a final, garbled burst of data before going silent. Analysts across the galactic concord dismissed the reports as cosmic background noise, until a single packet arrived intact. It contained a pattern of pulses so precise, so deliberate, that every scientist who saw it knew it was intentional. The signature belonged to no known civilization. It also defied every chart of known physics. For millennia the Concorde had ruled through quiet certainty. They possessed fleets older than human history, libraries of equations that predicted everything from the birth of quasars to the collapse of empires. But this signal slipped through their calculations like water through cupped claws. It came from a sector they had long marked barren and unremarkable, a place humans called the Edge of Silence. The first reconnaissance vessel dispatched to investigate was a Krellan scout, a sleek shard of living metal guided by a pilot born from generations of genetic refinement. It never returned. What little telemetry it transmitted showed nothing but an expanding sphere of pure darkness and a final instant where every sensor spiked beyond measurable limits, then flatlined. No wreckage, no debris, just absence. Admirals convened in orbital fortresses, their councils lit by holographic maps studded with red warnings. Debates flared and fizzled. Could it be a natural singularity? A cosmic string fracture? No hypothesis survived more than a few minutes under scrutiny. The readings contained harmonics, mathematical music that seemed to respond to observation. Something out there was listening. Far from the galactic capitals, another meeting unfolded in quiet secrecy. Hidden beneath the Siberian permafrost, the directors of a project known only as Alethea examined the same data. They did not share the Concorde's panic. Instead, they exchanged knowing glances across dimly lit conference tables. For decades, Earth's brightest minds, engineers, physicists, and cryptographers, had labored on an idea dismissed as impossible, an energy source that rewrote its own rules as it operated. They called it the recursive core, a device that drew power from the fluctuations of reality itself. Not merely a reactor but a question posed to the fabric of existence. And it was answering. No government publicly admitted the project existed. Even among those allowed inside, information was compartmentalized so thoroughly that no single person grasped the entire design. What united the team was not conquest but curiosity, a relentless human urge to know what lay beyond the next horizon. They had anticipated attention from their own kind, perhaps rival nations or corporate spies. They had not expected to alarm the galaxy. The first anomaly report from Concorde space reached them through backdoor listening posts designed for entirely different purposes. At once, Project Alethea switched protocols. Communication went dark. External transmissions ceased. Observers at distant outposts were instructed to leave equipment running but abandon their stations. Silence was now part of the experiment. Meanwhile, Concorde science vessels tried a second approach, automated drones built to withstand the death of suns. They crept toward the coordinates like cautious insects. Each recorded the same impossible field, a bubble of shifting geometry where distance folded like cloth. Instruments designed to measure the constants of nature returned numbers that danced and mutated. Then, as if acknowledging the intrusion, the bubble expanded slightly. Drones reversed course on their own, every guidance system overridden by commands no one had sent. Some returned intact but carried data blocks overwritten with a single repeating glyph, a spiral within a spiral traced in blazing white. In the halls of the Concorde's Grand Assembly, fear replaced debate. Armies were positioned without a formal declaration. Merchant routes were rerouted to avoid the sector. Propagandists labeled the phenomenon Void Syndrome, but whispers on the lower decks told a different story. Someone, somewhere, had built a weapon that could unmake reality. Back on Earth, The engineers of Alethea watched these developments with a mixture of fascination and resolve. They had known the core might trigger reactions beyond their comprehension. That was the point. Humanity's survival had always depended on doing the improbable. Fire in the Ice Age, steel in the Stone Age, rockets in the Age of Horses. Each leap forward had seemed impossible until it wasn't. To them, this was just the next step. A voice memo circulated privately among the project's inner circle, spoken by Dr. Amirachern, the lead architect of the core. Her words captured the quiet defiance of the team. The universe is not a puzzle to be solved once. It's a dialogue. We have simply learned to ask a better question. If they are afraid, it is because they have forgotten how to wonder. Her statement was never meant for the Concorde, yet somehow fragments of it leaked through encrypted channels, reaching alien ears already raw with anxiety. Translated and retranslated, it sounded less like curiosity and more like a warning. To those who had ruled unchallenged for eons, humanity's calm confidence felt like the cold edge of a blade. By the time the Concorde assembled its third investigation, a coalition of warships disguised as a scientific envoy, Alethea had completed its first full activation cycle. The core thrummed beneath the ice, a heartbeat of raw possibility. Instruments recorded an output that exceeded the mass energy equivalents of entire suns, yet no heat escaped. Space itself bent slightly around the facility, and for a moment every compass on Earth spun in unison. Unaware of these specifics but sensing their import, the Concorde fleet prepared to breach the anomaly's perimeter. The lead vessel transmitted a standard declaration of observation. The response arrived instantly, across distances that should have required minutes or hours. It was a single line of text, encoded in a pattern unique to human encryption yet readable to all: observation acknowledged. Approach denied. The message carried no threat, no flourish, just a certainty that chilled every listening mind. For the first time in generations, the Concorde hesitated. Their vast empire, accustomed to immediate obedience, found itself staring into an unknown force that spoke with quiet authority. And deep beneath the frozen soil of Earth, the architects of the impossible exchanged a silent look. The galaxy had heard their whisper. Now it would have to decide whether to listen or to fear. The Concorde's hesitation lasted only a heartbeat in cosmic terms. Pride would not permit paralysis. From the silent councils of the Veiled Dominion to the crystalline conclaves of the MRR, every major power dispatched observers and covert agents toward the anomaly humans had birthed. They arrived in waves. Cloaked couriers, stealth drones, thoughtforms projected across subspace. None returned unchanged. The first reconnaissance flotilla employed exotic shields capable of surviving neutron star flares. Their approach began flawlessly. Then, without warning, every vessel reported the same phenomenon, distance itself dissolving. Measurements of velocity, mass, and time shifted like quicksilver. Captains stared as their instruments looped impossible readings, recording forward movement and backward drift simultaneously. Before panic could harden into action, each ship's systems rebooted and transmitted a simple message in every known tongue: observe. Then the flotilla found itself hundreds of light-years from the site, engines cold, fuel reserves untouched. No damage. No explanation. Panic leaked through the Concorde's hierarchies despite every effort at censorship. Economies quivered. Markets for exotic energy collapsed. Civilians whispered of a phantom species rewriting natural law. Old legends of the first makers resurfaced, myths of ancient beings who shaped galaxies with a thought. But the glyphs in the intercepted transmissions matched no ancient script. Only humans, the so-called latecomers of the stars, fit the trail of clues. On Earth, Project Alethea advanced with steady precision. The recursive core now pulsed at full resonance, a rhythm that bent probability like a musician bending note. The engineering logs recorded fluctuations that should have destroyed the facility, yet the core adapted in real time, rewriting its own containment fields faster than any algorithm could predict. The team understood only fragments of what they had unleashed, but they recognized power when they saw it. More important, they recognized responsibility. Dr. Amira Chen and her inner circle debated their next step. Public revelation might unite humanity, or invite chaos. Concealment offered safety but risked misinterpretation, as the galaxy was already proving. In a secure chamber humming with the core's sub-audible throb, Chen concluded that silence itself could be their strongest message. "Let them wonder," she said, voice flat with conviction. "Curiosity is a greater deterrent than threat." The Concord did not interpret silence as peace. Councils split between hawks demanding preemptive strikes and pragmatists urging cautious dialogue. Every attempted infiltration failed. Espionage drones lost coherence inside a boundary that shifted like a living equation. Some reappeared adrift in unrelated star systems, their data cores replaced with identical spirals etched in white fire. Others returned apparently unharmed but carried corrupted memory banks, overwritten by recursive sequences that defied decryption. One Mirian analyst spent 70 hours staring at the sequences before collapsing, mind overloaded by a pattern that seemed to predict her every thought seconds before she formed it. Rumors of a reality weapon exploded through black markets and encrypted forums. Merchants speculated that the humans had built a device capable of folding entire civilizations into nothingness. Pirate syndicates offered fortunes for even a trace of the technology. None succeeded. Each attempt ended in quiet failure, sometimes with ships reappearing years older than when they left, sometimes with crews reporting a timeless void filled only by a low human heartbeat. Through it all, Earth maintained deliberate restraint. No broadcast, no military expansion, no visible fleet buildup. Instead, humanity released carefully chosen fragments of information into the datastream, cryptic equations, abstract diagrams, tantalizing hints of an energy principle beyond zero-point mechanics. To the outside observer these leaks looked accidental. In truth, they were bait. Each fragment contradicted the last, creating an endless labyrinth for foreign analysts. Weeks of alien supercomputer time yielded nothing but deeper confusion. The psychological effect was devastating. For species accustomed to mapping every quantum fluctuation, ignorance was a wound that would not close. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as a minor frontier species now diverted fleets from trade routes to stand guard near their homeworld. Diplomatic envoys sent cautious inquiries toward Earth's governments, only to be met with polite denial. "We are unaware of any such project," human ambassadors repeated, eyes calm, smiles thin. Among the Concord elite, paranoia metastasized. The Vale High Strategos ordered covert weaponization of collapsing star technology, a measure reserved for existential threat. The crystalline MYRR debated a preemptive alliance with their ancient rivals, an unthinkable partnership born of shared dread. Even the warlike Krellin, who had first lost a scout to the anomaly, began fortifying their core worlds and recalling distant fleets. Meanwhile, the recursive core reached a new plateau. Sensors recorded that its internal dimensions no longer corresponded to the external chamber. The device now contained a space measurable only as greater than infinite but less than absolute, a phrase coined in desperation by the lead mathematician. Energy output continued to rise while input remained negligible. It was as if the universe itself had decided to fuel the experiment, intrigued by humanity's audacity. Inside the facility, the project members felt a subtle change, air charged with possibility, a constant awareness of being observed by something vast yet intimate. Dreams grew vivid and shared, conversations finished before they began. Far from frightening them, the phenomena inspired quiet awe. They were no longer simply engineers, they were participants in a dialogue with reality itself. Outside that frozen chamber, fear reached a crescendo. Reports of stars flickering inexplicably near the anomaly sector spread across civilian networks. Some claimed to witness entire constellations momentarily rearranging. Whether true or exaggerated, the stories eroded the Concorde's authority. Riots broke out on worlds where faith in scientific certainty had been absolute for millennia. The phrase "the humans are rewriting the sky" became both prophecy and curse. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the Concorde authorized an unprecedented coalition expedition, hundreds of warships carrying the most advanced weaponry known. Officially, it remained a research mission. In reality, it was a siege force, prepared to neutralize whatever threat the humans had created. Admirals exchanged coded oaths that if contact turned hostile, they would annihilate the source no matter the cost. Their preparations did not go unnoticed. Deep within the Alethea complex, long-range detectors captured the movement of the Armada weeks before it crossed the outer rim. Humanity debated its response in secure, silent forums. Some urged diplomacy, others secrecy. Dr. Chen listened to every argument and finally spoke. "Let them come. The Corps will decide." When the coalition fleet reached the perimeter of the anomaly, every ship's sensors flared white. Space folded like a mirrored ocean. Time stretched into a single, endless instant. From their bridges, commanders watched as their weapon systems cycled through endless activation loops without firing a shot. Then a transmission. Fear bled across the galaxy like a slow poison. Merchant guilds rerouted centuries-old trade lanes to avoid the sole frontier. Worlds once bold in exploration sealed their skies, grounding fleets that had crossed countless light-years without hesitation. The Concorde's most stable currencies collapsed in days, entire economies trembling at the thought of a human-made power that could erase the constants of nature. Panic became a background hum in every broadcast, every encrypted council meeting, every whispered conversation in the markets of distant nebulae. The coalition fleet that had confronted the anomaly drifted home in silence, their crews shaken by the wordless contact. Admirals delivered reports stripped of detail, speaking only of overwhelming unknown variables. Their eyes carried something deeper than fear, the recognition that the humans possessed an influence beyond weapons or fleets. No declaration of war was issued, yet every power in the Concorde began to mobilize. Ships were armed, research budgets tripled, and emergency measures declared on dozens of worlds. The term recursive core spread like wildfire through black channels and scientific symposiums alike. Most believed it to be the name of the device. A few suspected it was merely the first layer of a much larger secret. Within that tension, Earth remained outwardly serene. No grand statements, no military parades. The governments of humanity continued their daily routines as though the universe were not staring in their direction. This quiet confidence unsettled the Concorde far more than open hostility could have. To them, the absence of threat read as the greatest warning of all. How powerful must a civilization be to need no display? Inside the buried Siberian complex, Project Alethea refined its creation with measured care. Engineers observed the core generating stable wormholes that formed and collapsed in microseconds, folding space like a craftsman shaping silk. Each event released no detectable radiation, no gravitational shock. Energy metrics soared beyond theoretical maxima, yet the chamber's temperature never rose a degree. Chen and her team kept meticulous records, but their focus shifted from control to comprehension. They no longer asked how to harness the core, they asked what it wanted to become. The core's influence radiated outward. Instruments stationed across the solar system began returning anomalous readings, fluctuations in quantum vacuum states, particles appearing and vanishing in synchronized patterns. Astronomers on Mars captured images of distant stars subtly bending toward geometric alignments, as though the galaxy itself were responding to an unseen rhythm. For every anomaly, humanity maintained public silence. Leaks appeared only when intended, brief, deliberate data drops containing incomplete equations or cryptic diagrams. Each fragment contradicted the next, sowing doubt among alien analysts while sharpening the core's legend. Galactic society reacted in unpredictable ways. On wealthier Concord worlds, citizens staged panic migrations to fortified underground cities. On others, fringe movements flourished, preaching that humans were heralds of a new cosmic epoch. Some called the core the second singularity, a being rather than a device. Small cults began sending transmissions toward Earth, offering allegiance in exchange for protection from the unknown future. Human leaders quietly intercepted these messages, neither acknowledging nor encouraging them. Alien militaries, desperate for parity, accelerated forbidden research. The Veiled Dominion detonated a white dwarf core in a failed attempt to replicate infinite energy. The experiment annihilated an entire system and destabilized 3 neighboring trade routes. The MYR tried to create a time inversion weapon, only to watch their prototype vanish into its own causality loop. Each calamity amplified the myth of human supremacy. The more the galaxy struggled to match the core, the clearer it became that imitation was impossible. Some factions turned to covert aggression. Elite strike teams, cloaked in dimensional phase shifts, attempted infiltration of the solar system. Each mission ended with eerie precision. Ships disabled without harm to crew, instruments recording a soft harmonic tone that matched the pulse of a human heartbeat. In every case, the captured infiltrators reported a shared experience, a sudden, crystalline understanding that any act of violence would be not only futile but irrelevant. They returned to their worlds speaking of overwhelming calm, a serenity that frightened their superiors more than threats of destruction ever could. Human intelligence agencies monitored every incursion yet chose not to retaliate. Their restraint fed the legend of invincibility. Analysts within the Concord began to argue that the core represented not a weapon but a philosophical advantage, an understanding of reality so profound that conventional conflict could not touch it. To governments built on power through fear, this realization was more destabilizing than a fleet of planet killers. Meanwhile, subtle ripples of the core's operation continued to manifest. Cosmic rays across vast regions of space began to synchronize, producing rhythms that mirrored the core's pulse. Deep space observatories captured unprecedented gravitational wave patterns that seemed to convey a complex mathematical message. Linguists from multiple species struggled to decode it, only to find fragments of human prime number sequences hidden within. It was as though the universe itself was beginning to speak in humanity's language. Ordinary humans carried on with remarkable composure. Cities bustled, trade continued, art flourished. News of the core remained a whispered rumor rather than a daily headline, carefully managed by an international accord to avoid panic. Humanity's collective calm became its most potent display of strength. While other civilizations built doomsday arsenals or retreated into superstition, Earth presented a united, unshaken front. Even rival nations quietly shared intelligence and resources, recognizing that the core's existence transcended politics. For the first time in recorded history, humanity acted as a single species. Alien observers found this unity more unsettling than the technology itself. For centuries they had counted on human division, certain that our fractious nature limited our reach. Now they saw a civilization capable of internal cooperation on a scale the Concord had never achieved. Reports from embedded spies warned that humanity's social cohesion had become a strategic asset more dangerous than any weapon. The pressure within the Concord reached a breaking point. High councils convened emergency summits in secret locations, guarded by fleets that drained entire regional defenses. Arguments erupted. Strike now and risk annihilation, or continue to wait while humans advanced beyond comprehension. Every option led back to the same conclusion. The galaxy's most powerful alliance was no longer in control of its destiny. Humanity, once dismissed as a peripheral curiosity, now set the tempo of cosmic history. In the cold heart of Aletheia, the core pulsed with a quiet certainty that defied translation. Scientists described its rhythm as a conversation with reality, a dialogue between possibility and will. When asked whether it could be turned off, Chen answered with a question of. The Concorde's coalition armada loitered at the edge of the solar frontier, an array of warships larger than most planetary populations. For months they had circled in restless formation, their admirals issuing veiled communiques about research, while secretly rehearsing invasion drills. Every sensor in the galaxy tracked their presence, yet Earth gave no sign of alarm. Commercial satellites remained in orbit, civilian transmissions flowed without interruption, and planetary defenses stayed at ordinary readiness. The absence of response disoriented the fleet more than any overt hostility could have. It is difficult to attack a civilization that behaves as though you are irrelevant. Inside the frozen depths of the Siberian complex, the recursive core continued its steady heartbeat. Energy readings exceeded every known scale, yet the chamber remained quiet, the air faintly luminous with an unseen geometry. Dr. Amira Chen and her team knew the device had surpassed its original parameters. It was no longer merely a source of infinite energy or instantaneous travel. It had become a bridge between intent and reality itself, a mechanism through which thought could nudge the laws of the cosmos. The scientists recorded their data with disciplined calm, but privately they sensed that the core was listening as much as it was acting. At last the coalition commanders, weary of paralysis and pressured by their own governments, transmitted a formal ultimatum. The message, delivered in every major galactic language, demanded immediate surrender of the technology and open inspection of all human facilities. They cloaked the demand in the language of collective security, yet the threat of annihilation vibrated beneath every word. The Concorde expected either capitulation or negotiation. They received neither. The reply arrived not from human diplomats but as a sudden shift in the stars themselves. Without warning, a lattice of light unfolded across the night sky of every inhabited world. It was not a broadcast, not a hologram, but an instantaneous rearrangement of visible space, a phenomenon later described as a cosmic aurora shaped into a single glowing spiral. Within that spiral a voice emerged, clear and resonant in every mind regardless of species or sensory organ. It carried the unmistakable cadence of humanity, yet no individual mouth had spoken it. "We are not a weapon," the voice said. "We are an answer to a question the universe has long whispered. We seek only the freedom to explore and to learn. Interference is unnecessary. Aggression will serve no purpose. The door is open. Choose knowledge or remain as you are." The message contained no threat, but every observer felt the underlying power. As the words resonated, the fleet's surrounding soul found themselves unable to move. Weapons refused to arm. Navigation systems reported impossible coordinates, folding in recursive loops that led back to their origin. Pilots struggled to send signals only to discover their transmissions already delivered and answered before they spoke. The core had extended its influence beyond the limits of physics, and the Armada understood that force was meaningless. Panic erupted across the Concorde's command network. Some captains attempted emergency jumps, only to emerge where they had started. Others tried to fire, but their energy arrays dissolved into harmless static. Across the galaxy, scientists analyzing the spiral of light discovered a deeper layer, an intricate set of mathematical proofs embedded in the pattern, demonstrating principles that rendered conventional propulsion, communication, and energy systems obsolete. It was a gift and a warning at once, a demonstration that humanity could have chosen conquest yet offered comprehension instead. On Earth, the human population watched the spectacle with a mix of awe and quiet pride. Cities paused, not in fear but in recognition that something irreversible had happened. For the first time, the entire species felt a collective shift, a certainty that the cosmos itself had acknowledged their presence as an equal participant. Governments held emergency meetings, but there was little to decide. The core had spoken for humanity more eloquently than any treaty or speech could. In the days that followed, the coalition fleet retreated without a shot fired. Official statements framed the withdrawal as a mutual de-escalation, but those present knew the truth. They had encountered a force that could not be conquered or even negotiated in the old sense. Power, once measured in weapons and territory, now lay in understanding, and humanity had moved several steps ahead. Across the Concord, reactions varied. Some civilizations welcomed the revelation, dispatching peaceful envoys seeking dialogue. Others sank into isolation, fearing cultural extinction more than physical defeat. Economies reorganized around the new physics revealed in the spiral, sparking a technological renaissance. But every society, no matter how proud, now plotted its future with Earth at the center of the map. Within the Alethea facility, the scientists debated what the core had truly become. Was it a machine, a sentient being, or an emergent property of reality itself? Data suggested that the device no longer drew power from any measurable source. Instead, it operated on intent, amplifying the focused will of those who approached it with purpose rather than greed. Chen recorded a final note in the project log. The core is not ours. We are its companions. It listens when we dare to ask. Humanity faced a choice of its own. The core made instantaneous travel across galaxies trivial. Entire star clusters could be reached in a heartbeat, resources beyond imagination within reach. Yet the world's leaders agreed on a principle that astonished outside observers. Exploration would proceed carefully, not as conquest but as discovery. The first destinations were chosen not for wealth but for knowledge, ancient supernova remnants, mysterious voids where dark matter swirled, places where the universe whispered questions still unanswered. The psychological balance of the galaxy tilted. Former empires found themselves petitioning humanity for guidance. Treaties were redrafted to acknowledge a new reality in which Earth was no longer a junior partner but a silent fulcrum. Yet humans demanded no tribute, imposed no rule. They offered collaboration and shared certain mathematical breakthroughs while holding the core's deepest secrets close. The restraint puzzled many but gradually inspired trust. In time, even the proudest Concord species began to see humans not as conquerors but as stewards of a frontier they all might share. Legends spread quickly. Children on distant moons whispered bedtime stories of the blue planet that had taught the stars to listen. Artists painted the Great Spiral in every medium imaginable. Philosophers debated whether humanity had awakened an intelligence older than the universe or had simply uncovered the universe's own capacity to dream. The truth mattered less than the transformation it inspired, a collective realization that reality was not a cage but a conversation. On a quiet evening months later, Chern stood alone in the core chamber, surrounded by the soft glow of shifting geometry. The device pulsed like a vast, patient heart. She placed her hand on the air just above its surface and felt a subtle vibration, as if the universe itself were breathing with her. No words passed between them, yet she understood. This was only the